What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Black Myth Wukong, my early impressions of the game. The game's setting records over there on Steam. You're seeing it break the 2.35 million player base. It's doing incredible numbers, and it's really great to see, and my impressions of it kind of mimic that. I think it's worth it. I think this game is a really, really fun game. Now, it's not a perfect game. It's absolutely not a perfect game, but fun really is the key word, and it's something that I kept coming back to, and it's actually kind of an odd word to use for a game that can be as challenging as this game. So we've heard comparisons from like the Stellar Blades of the world, and you got different stances in this game, so you can maybe throw out like the Jedi series. Obviously it's got a little FromSoft in it. I think it stands with those. I mean, I really, after playing the first roughly 5 hours, I just beat the Tiger boss in Chapter 2. There are times where when it kind of opens up a little bit and allows for a little exploration, it does remind me of Stellar Blade. The combat, I think, is actually a bit faster than Stellar Blade. It's a little bit more finicky with, like, perfect dodging versus Stellar Blade with perfect dodging and perfect blocking. But the game, I think, is just a lot of fun. At times, it can be a boss gauntlet, and I actually would kind of laugh, to be honest with you, because it's not all that bad. I think the pacing is kind of all over the place, but the game works. Like, I'm always enjoying it. So there'll be some times where you'll walk up, you'll do a cutscene, you'll face a boss, and then you'll literally go to the next area. Like, you'll walk 20, 30, 40 feet, you'll get a shrine, and then you'll face another boss. And that'll happen quite a few times. It already has happened to me quite a few times. There's other times where I think, honestly, a lot like Stellar Blade, but probably a little bit more condensed. It'll open up and it'll say, okay, you know where you need to go. Like, this is the story boss, right? But there's maybe an optional boss. Maybe there's a side quest. There's a side quest in Chapter 2 where somebody's talking about a frog, right, that eats like a possession. And, you don't even have to look all that hard to find it. There's the frog and it's a boss. And it's actually quite a challenging boss. And it's a side quest. In the first kind of area in Chapter 1, there's two bosses. I don't even know I think you have to do at least one of them, but you can skip or you can face them. For me personally, I'm going after any boss. Any boss I find is a target of my character because I need that will. I need the levels for your skill points and stuff. I need all of that stuff. And actually, I do think it makes the story bosses much easier the more kind of padded you are as a character. I found going into some, not all, some story bosses, I found I was doing a lot more damage than I probably should have done at that time because I've increased, I've upgraded my staff as much as humanly possible. I have the best armor humanly possible, and it's because I'm finding any materials I possibly can in the environment. I'm looting. I'm finding, things that'll extend your stamina, extend your health. I'm level 25 when probably you're not supposed to be 25 where I am, currently in the game. So the game, I'm kind of like explaining just these small little things. In terms of that exploration, though, one kind of story I want to throw out, I actually really love it. So, again, I talk about it's uneven. It's definitely uneven. Sometimes there is nothing to explore, and sometimes there is. But there was one instance where I went through like a freaking gauntlet of minions, like smaller enemies, and they don't become it. They start easy, right? But as the game goes, even the minions are rather difficult, especially if there's 2, 3, 4 of them attacking you at once. So I went through, and I almost died, and it was quite a struggle. And I was even saying in my head, God, I wish that, or I hope that there's something at the end of this because it was off the beaten path. And it's like, okay, I went through a gauntlet of all of these smaller minion enemies. There's got to be something worth it. And then there was, I think, 2 things, one of which was a material needed to upgrade my staff, which I was looking for. And the other, maybe it was will, or it was a thing to extend one of my health, or a spell or a stamina bar. And I felt in that moment like, that sense of exploration was really good. Like the reward versus what you put into it, right? Like how challenging it was and the suffering I had to go through to get there. The reward was worth it. And I haven't been let down in that department. If you go through a gauntlet, if you go through a really tough side boss, the reward is normally, in fact, so far, all the time, the reward is all the time worth going through that. And I think that actually makes this game, I talk about fun. Well, rewarding can lead to fun, right? Because if you feel like everything you're doing has purpose, if you feel like you're going to improve in some way, and I'm not even talking about like the bosses are awesome. Honestly, like visually, they're excellent. The designs of them, they're all so freaking different. You're trying to learn, right? There's always that first 1, 2, 3 times you're playing a boss where you're learning the move set, you're you're learning, you could see a move in try number 3 and you say, I've never seen that move before, right? So you kind of have to adjust. And so you're going to be doing that. And there are a few times in this game where it does get a little like finicky. I found like the lock-on system and the speed at which your character moves, sometimes hits won't actually hit. Sometimes enemies will hit you without actually hitting you. One thing I found numerous times, and I don't know if this is like a common thing people are experiencing, when you use the summon thing, when you can pick up the different souls of the bigger bosses and you can transform into them, right? So I have like the giant head that can headbutt. It doesn't do it, I would say 75% of the time. I'll hit L2, R2, and it'll pull up the R2 menu. If you hold R2, you can see the spells that you use, which, by the way, they're extremely awesome and extremely, they feel good, right? And then you also can have the potions that's mapped to the D-pad, and that's if you hold R2. Well, if you hold L2 and R2, or you tap it or whatever, you transform into that thing. Well, it doesn't work for me like most of the time. I don't know if I'm doing it wrong, or I don't know if it's like a game issue, but I did find some of those things to happen. I found enemies can kind of glitch, I would say, quite a bit. They can kind of fall off a rock and be stuck and then do damage to you if you get too close without actually technically hitting you. There is some finickiness. It's actually the same thing I would say with the visuals and performance. The visuals, for the most part, are excellent, right? Like Unreal Engine 5, but I find if you get too close to certain things, it actually kind of breaks it, because like the characters look really good, the environment looks good at a distance, and not all of it looks bad like up close, but I'm a big water guy, so there's a lot of water actually in this game. I'm quite impressed. And there's one section where like a little river goes over, right? So it's like a little waterfall. And I went up to it and it looks terrible. Looks absolutely awful. I've seen PS3, Xbox 360 era water look better. So, I don't know. I guess it's just the engine. It's just, the optimization that it's at right now. Something like the water, I would say, at a distance looks beautiful, looks amazing. But when you get really close and you start to examine it, you say, or at least certain parts to it, right? But it's like that for the environment. It's like that for other things as well. Looks really, not all things look great from afar and look bad up close. And then performance, I'm actually playing it on PlayStation, right? So I know many people are playing it on PC. But for PlayStation, I would say overall, it definitely works. Like it's going along fine. I have it on performance mode, right? There were sometimes I got really scared because I'm like, I was facing bosses. It didn't happen. This never happened during like just the exploration or fighting a smaller thing. But there were a few times when I was fighting a boss and like it would almost pause and it would kind of chug and then it would kind of catch up to itself. And that happened maybe 2 or 3 times in 5 hours. So not terrible. In fact, I wouldn't even say all that bad, but I do wonder, right? Because like the game is long, the game's 20 plus hours. So like, does it get worse as the game goes, or will a patch kind of fix those issues, right? Just something to keep in mind. It doesn't ruin it, right? I did not suffer in terms of my character's health. I did not suffer from the game buffering basically 2-3 times. But no, overall, the game is just an absolute blast. I know, we talked about bosses. I didn't really talk about combat except for like the speed of it. It's just fun. Like I almost don't know how to put it into words. Like you just feel more and more comfortable with it. It's got that hook. It's got the formula that the Stellar Blades and FromSoft and Jedi games, it's got that formula that works where, like I talked about, like that rewarding nature where you never feel completely defeated. You might die a few times. I actually feel like I'm doing really good. And I think I said that for Stellar Blade. The last couple bosses of Stellar Blade kicked my butt, but I still beat it. I mean, I still went through it. I felt really good about kind of my skill level with Stellar Blade. And Black Myth, I'm feeling like great. Like some bosses that friends of mine are taking, 10, 15 times, takes me 2. And it's not to put anybody down, but it's like, okay, I'm feeling good. Like I don't know, it's got this hook and the speed of things, but at the same time, you kind of have to be patient at times, right? And the dodging is different. Again, I mentioned the Stellar Blade with perfect dodge and perfect parrying. For Black Myth, because it's faster, I actually find the dodge like you almost have to think about when you're gonna dodge and then dodge a quarter second after, and that's how you get the perfect dodge in this game. But it's like fulfilling, like when you nail that perfect dodge and you see like the clone of you like standing there, it feels really good, and you can get into a roll. I mean, I mentioned that tiger boss fight, the bear boss fight, the frog boss fight. There's some of them where I was perfect dodging 3-4 times in succession, like just 1, 2, 3, 4, then take a couple breaks, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, it felt really good. So once the game gets rolling and once you start feeling comfortable and start to understand the mechanics, everything, I would say this too, in case you're like concerned or whatever, from somebody like me, I need a game like Elden Ring kind of explained to me, right? Like, I can play it in terms of like the actual gameplay, and I can kind of learn, and you figure out the boss's attacks and whatnot. But a lot of like the systems in those games confuses me. I mean, that's just the truth. That's just what happens to me. This game, I'd actually say so far is rather easy. Like how you craft, how you brew, how you like anything like that, right? How you buy things, sell things, how you put in skill points and maybe which paths to take. Like, it's all relatively straightforward and easy, where, again, it has some of the systems and the mechanics of some of these games I think are actually more complicated. And again, I mean, for some people that might be better, right? For me, honestly, like, this is a easier game for me to get into than like a Dark Souls 2 or 3, right? Like, and that's just for me, and that might be like better or worse for you, but I'm really enjoying it. There were some times I got frustrated, and again, I felt there were some cheap shots taken at times. Again, I think the pacing is kind of uneven, the visuals are kind of uneven, but I'm not saying, again, it's not a perfect game, and also this isn't actually a review. This is just kind of me going through my thoughts of it, but I'm really, really having a lot of fun, and it's got that feel of like just one more, right? Like, you beat the boss, and you say, well, one more boss, because there's going to be a boss like 5-10 minutes later anyway, right? It's like, well, let me just get to that boss, let me see if I can do it, and if I can beat it in 1 or 2 tries, I'll do it. If not, I'll go to bed or something. It's got that kind of feel to it, and again, like in terms of that gauntlet versus exploration thing, while the pacing is uneven, I actually don't dislike either of them. Like, when they let you explore, I think that's great, and even when they do like boss after boss, I actually think that's fine too, because the bosses are cool and the bosses are really fun to play against, and then they give you a lot of stuff right when you beat them. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.